We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Donald Trump names campaign manager Susie Wiles as White House Chief of Staff, signals a seismic shift in policies by suggesting he will talk to Vladimir Putin. US President Joe Biden pledges peaceful transfer of power, urges Americans to bring down temperature in contrast to Trump's refusal to accept 2020 defeat. US stocks close higher after Federal Reserve cuts interest rates by a quarter point. Chief Powell says election results has no near-term policy impact. Zelensky addresses European leaders, says it's unacceptable for Europe to offer the Kremlin concessions. European leaders meet, stresses self-reliance on security. And Cuba slowly restores power after Hurricane Rafael leaves 10 million people in the dark. And the top story this hour, US President-elect Donald Trump has announced his campaign manager Susan Wiles to serve as his White House Chief of Staff. It is Trump's first major appointment since winning this week's election, entrusting a top position to a political operative who helped him win the election. Wiles will be the first woman to serve as White House Chief of Staff. Wiles is a long-time Florida-based political strategist and is viewed as trustworthy and gets plaudits for helping to manage Trump's successful run for the presidency. Trump chose Wiles over former House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a California Republican who's close to Trump and has been a frequent visitor to Mar-a-Lago.
Appreciation for Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come here. Come here, Susie. Chris, come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The Ice Maiden, we call her the Ice Maiden. Come here, Chris. Come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background. Come here, Susie.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has appointed Ambassador Stephen Mull to coordinate the transition to Donald Trump's administration on behalf of the State Department, though the State Department has not yet made contact with the Trump transition team. Spokesperson Matthew Miller said that Blinken intends to use his remaining time in office to make tangible progress on a number of critical issues, including on competition with China, ensuring Ukraine is in the best possible position for success, and bringing an end to the fighting in Lebanon and Gaza.
Over the past 2 days, Secretary Blinken has been meeting with people from across the department to discuss the work ahead of us over the next 74 days between now and January 20th. In those meetings, he has emphasized 2 points. First, the peaceful transfer of power is an essential element of our democracy that is vital to our nation's security. That's why it's so important for us to conduct a smooth, efficient, and professional transition process. The Secretary has appointed Ambassador Stephen Mull, a distinguished member of the State Department family, to coordinate these efforts on behalf of the department. Ambassador Mull will work with the President-elect's team to ensure as successful a transition as possible.
Well, U.S. President Joe Biden says in an address to the nation from the White House that he will ensure a peaceful and orderly transition to Donald Trump after the Republicans' sweeping election win. Biden urged Americans to bring down the temperature following Donald Trump's election victory and sought to console fellow Democrats who were alarmed by the former president's stunning comeback. Biden said Tuesday's election had proven the integrity of the U.S. electoral system and said he would preside over an orderly transfer of power.
Something I hope we can do, no matter who you voted for, is see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Bring down the temperature. I also hope we can lay to rest the question about the integrity of the American electoral system. It is honest, it is fair, and it is transparent. And it can be trusted, win or lose. I will do my duty as president. I'll fulfill my oath, and I will honor the Constitution. On January 20th, we'll have a peaceful transfer of power here in America.
Well, the U.S. Federal Reserve on Thursday slashed interest rates by 25 basis points amid cooling inflation and a weakening labor market, marking the second rate cut in this easing cycle. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell told reporters on Thursday that the U.S. Central Bank has no near-term plans to change policy following the outcome of this week's election. Upon asking if he would resign when asked to leave early by President-elect Donald Trump, Powell clearly gave a no. Powell said that the labor market has cooled and remains solid, while the inflation has eased substantially from a peak of 7% to 2.1% as of September.
So let me say that in the near term, the election will have no effects on our policy decisions. As you know, many things affect the economy, and anyone who writes down forecasts in their job will tell you that the economy is quite difficult to forecast looking out past the very near term. Here, we don't know what the timing and substance of any policy changes will be. We therefore don't know what the effects on the economy would be, specifically whether and to what extent those policies would matter for the achievement of our goal variables, maximum employment and price stability.
Well, European leaders met on Thursday in Budapest after Donald Trump's election victory, expressing a shared realization Europe must take charge of its own security. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, speaking after the summit with over 40 European leaders, underscored a critical shift, stating, "We cannot wait for the Americans to protect us." This gathering of the European political community saw leaders weighing varied opinions, but ultimately finding common ground, a call for Europe to act independently to ensure its peace and security.
There was an agreement that the American election results should be reacted to. We need to know that big changes are coming and we need to react to it. There was an agreement that there should be peace in Europe as soon as possible. There was an agreement that Europe should assume greater responsibility for its own peace and security in future. To put it even more bluntly, we cannot expect Americans to be the only ones to take care of us.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says it would be unacceptable for Europe to offer the Kremlin concessions to halt Russia-Ukraine war. Speaking to European leaders at a summit in Hungary, Zelensky blasted those who are urging him to give in to some of President Vladimir Putin's demands and urges Europe and the United States not to loosen ties following the election of Donald Trump.
In the European Political Community Summit in UK in July, there has been much talk about the need to yield to Putin, to back down, to make some concessions. And really some, even from Europe, some leaders were strongly advocated Ukraine making concessions to Putin. It's unacceptable for Ukraine and unacceptable for all Europe.
Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump indicated that they were ready to hold talks after the Republican tycoon emerged as the victor in the race for the White House. Putin congratulated Trump and said Moscow was ready for dialogue with the Republican president-elect. Trump also revealed that he was also prepared for conversation with Putin. Trump said he had spoken to probably 70 world leaders since Wednesday morning, but revealed that he had not spoken to Putin yet. Further, Putin praised Trump for handling himself during an assassination attempt at a rally. He said Trump turned out to be a courageous person at a discussion club in the Russian Black Sea resort of Sochi. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that if Ukraine did not remain neutral, then it would be used against Russia, but said Moscow was ready for talks on a way to end the conflict based on the realities on the ground.
If there is no neutrality, then it is difficult to imagine the existence of any good neighborly relations between Russia and Ukraine, because this means that Ukraine will be constantly used as a tool in somebody else's hand and to damage the interest of the Russian Federation. Thus, the basic conditions for normalization of relations will not be created. On the contrary, we are determined to create conditions for a long term settlement and so that Ukraine finally becomes an independent sovereign state and would not be a tool in the hands of third countries.
Каких-то других стран, которые считали.
Well, further, Putin said that he did not want Russia to go back to the path it was on until 2022, before the conflict.
Russia is following its own path. I hope it will not turn away from the path of following its national interests. But of course, it needs to be integrated. We have never refused this, but I would not like Russia to return to the path it followed until 2022. And this was a path that was associated with such a hidden, veiled intervention against our country, aimed at subjecting it to interests of some other countries that believed that they had the right to do so.
В руках третьих стран.
Well, the White House said that the United States will keep surging aid to Ukraine ahead of Democratic President Joe Biden's transfer of power to Republican President-elect Donald Trump in January.
We're going to surge and get that out there to Ukraine. We understand how important it is to make sure they have what they need. And so that hasn't changed. That is no different. And so we're going to surging that aid to Ukraine. We have taken action to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses and enhance their battlefield capabilities. And so we are committed.
Well, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Thursday that UK support for Ukraine remains ironclad on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit in Budapest.
Well, I've just come from a meeting with President Zelensky, and it was an opportunity for me to repeat and affirm our ironclad support of Ukraine. And the broader point here in Hungary at this meeting has been that this isn't just about the sovereignty of Ukraine, although of course it is about that. It's also about our freedom, our democracy and our values.
And now let's give you some news from around the world. Peruvian National Police presented its security strategy for the upcoming APEC summit in Lima. Over 20,000 officers will be deployed for the event on permanent service, including an emergency squad, said the head of Peru's Police Emergency Division, Colonel Percy Gura. The APEC summit, scheduled from November 10 to the 16th, will see participation from 21 countries, including the United States, China, Canada and Russia. 3 people have been charged in relation to One Direction singer Liam Payne's death in a fall from his Buenos Aires hotel balcony last month. The ex-One Direction singer's death shocked the world and raised questions about how he had fallen. Argentine authorities said the singer consumed cocaine, alcohol and a prescription antidepressant before falling to his death from a Buenos Aires hotel balcony last month. Colombia holds its first ever national conference dedicated to addressing violence against children. The event, attended by government officials, child welfare advocates and international organizations, aims to raise awareness about the pressing issues of child abuse, exploitation and neglect across Colombia. Discussions focused on strategies to prevent violence, strengthen legal frameworks and improve support services for the affected children. Hurricane Rafael tore through western Cuba, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake on Thursday. Authorities said they had begun restoring power to the eastern half of the island on Thursday, a day after Hurricane Rafael knocked out the country's electrical grid, leaving 10 million people in the dark. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said the hurricane had spun off westward into the Gulf of Mexico, whereas it no longer posed an immediate threat to the land. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. India slams Canada for blocking Australian news outlet airing Jaishankar's press conference, says it highlights Canada's hypocrisy on freedom of speech. The 4-day elaborate celebration of Chhath Puja in honor of the sun comes to an end today after offerings to the rising sun while standing in a water body. And South Africa clashes with India in 4-match T20 series from today in Durban. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Moving on, India has reacted strongly to the reports that Canada blocked Australian news outlet airing External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's press conference. India has said such actions highlight Canada's hypocrisy towards freedom of speech.
We've also seen that we understand that the social media handles and pages of this particular outlet, which is an important diaspora outlet, has been blocked and are not available for viewers in Canada. This happened just an hour or so, a few hours after this particular handle carried the press conference of External Affairs Minister along with Penny Wong. And the particular media outlet also had several articles on the visit of the External Affairs Minister, as also an interview of External Affairs Minister. So we were surprised. It looks strange to us, but nonetheless, what I will say that these are actions which yet again highlight the hypocrisy of Canada towards freedom of speech.
Well, during his Australia visit, which ended on Thursday, Dr. Jaishankar met Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and also co-chaired the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with Wong. We get you this detailed report.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar visited Australia from 3rd to 7th November 2024. During this visit, Dr. Jaishankar attended a number of events. During his meetings with CEOs and business leaders in Sydney, the minister underlined the ongoing transformations in India in digital infrastructure, manufacturing and skilling.
We've done less than 150 days of the third term, but even in this period, we have made we've taken some very big calls. Among the calls which might be of interest to you, one is to set up 12 major industrial zones across India with a view to attracting global manufacturing and promoting domestic manufacturing. Secondly, to double down on the infrastructure spending because the infrastructure investments are still primarily driven by government spending. Three, a big focus on human resources development, on skills.
Dr. Jaishankar also met with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on November 6th in Canberra. They discussed ways to deepen the bilateral comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries. On November 5th, Dr. Jaishankar co-chaired the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue, or the FMFD, with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Canberra. The leaders reviewed entire gamut of bilateral relations, including political and strategic, defense and security, trade and investments, education and mobility. At the Raisina Down Under 2024 session in Canberra, Dr. Jaishankar spoke about India's priorities in the Indo-Pacific and opportunities for greater collaboration with Australia and New Zealand. India's External Affairs Minister also inaugurated the Consulate General of India at Brisbane in Australia. The new consulate in Brisbane is India's fourth in Australia, alongside the existing consulates in Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. Fuzail Ahmed reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, on the second leg of his two-nation visit, Jaishankar will travel to Singapore today, during which he will address the 8th roundtable of ASEAN-India network of think tanks. He will also meet the leadership of Singapore to review the close partnership between the two countries and explore avenues to further enhance the bilateral relationship. Well, ahead of Maharashtra Assembly polls, political heavyweights from Delhi are descending on the state for one last voter outreach before ballots are cast. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address two election rallies in Dhule and Nashik today. Meanwhile, Bharatiya Janata Party leaders discuss the campaign strategy for the upcoming Maharashtra and Jharkhand Assembly elections, including the by-polls in several states at a meeting in the national capital on Tuesday. The voting in Maharashtra is scheduled for November 20th, while Jharkhand will vote in two phases on 13th November and 20th November. The votes for both assembly elections will be counted on November 23rd. And the four-day Hindu festival of Chhath Puja culminates today, honoring the sun for bestowing a long, healthy and prosperous life. Its unique rituals involve praying to the rising and setting sun while standing in a body of water. It begins with a 36-hour fast after the meal of chapati and rice pudding, during which they cannot even drink water. The festival is observed 6 days after Diwali. The major Hindu festival has recently traversed beyond India. The Indian diaspora in the United States, the United Kingdom and other countries has taken the celebrations to foreign shores. Donning big vermilion on forehead, Indians abroad say they feel great to be able to follow the rituals and keep the family traditions alive, far away from home.
We have been celebrating Chhath here for over 5 years now, and from the first day, Kaddu Bhat, Kheer Roti, and today we have enjoyed it a lot, and we're going to have a lot of fun together.
Now let's take a look at other stories making news today. President Draupadi Murmu will address the Central Vigilance Awareness Week function in New Delhi on Friday. This year, the week will be observed from the 28th of October to 3rd of November with the theme Culture of Integrity for Nation's Prosperity. As the festive season wraps up, Indian Railways is set to run 164 special trains starting on Friday to help passengers return to their destinations. Over the next 3 days, around 476 trains are scheduled to accommodate the post-festival travel rush. Indian Coast Guard Chief Director General S. Paramesh called on Union Home Minister Amit Shah and briefed him about the vital role played by the force in protecting national maritime zones, law enforcement at sea, pollution response and SAR operations. The meeting also emphasized on ICG efforts towards self-reliance and indigenization, highlighting the importance of cooperation among armed forces for robust coastal security. And in sports, South Africa begins a 4-match T20 international series against India at Kingsmead, Durban on Friday, following their defeat in the T20 World Cup final by the visitors over 4 months ago. The teams have undergone substantial alterations compared to those that competed in Barbados, where India secured victory with a 7-run margin. The South African side will be without key performance from their World Cup campaign, including pace bowlers Kagiso Rabada and Anrich Nortje. spinner Tabriz Shamsi and wicketkeeper batsman Quinton de Kock. India's squad features only 4 players from their World Cup winning team as the majority prepare for a test series in Australia. The remaining players are captain Suryakumar Yadav, Hardik Pandya, Akshar Patel and Arshdeep Singh. And hundreds of people, including Senegal's president, attend the opening ceremony of the latest edition of the Dakar Biennial African Contemporary Art Exhibition, also known as Blackouts, underscoring the resilience and creativity of African culture, offering a platform that celebrates both tradition and innovation in African arts. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.